A person's dietary consumption of cholesterol and fat is one of the most important factors determining the level of cholesterol in the person's blood, serum cholesterol. Okay, so this cholesterol is just the level of cholesterol in the person's blood. So it's just the cholesterol in someone's blood we'll call it SC. So SC levels rise proportionally to increased cholesterol and fat consumption until that consumption reaches a threshold. Okay, so if it rises proportionally, that's saying, hey, if you have more cholesterol, if you have more fat, then you're going to have a higher SC level in general. And it rises proportionally, right? So like, I guess think of these as the same height, right? Like the amount that you increase the fat by, the amount that you increase the cholesterol by, that's the amount that you're going to increase the SC by. But once you hit the threshold, right? So like, let's say this is the threshold. Once you hit the threshold, the SC levels rise only gradually. So they rise only a little bit, I guess. They rise less, even with dramatic increases in consumption of, I guess, fat and cholesterol, right? Okay. The threshold is 1/4 of the average American diet, 1/4 the consumption level. So I'm just going to write 1/4. The statements above, if true, most strongly support which one of the following? Let's see. A, the threshold can be lowered by lowering the dietary consumption of cholesterol and fat. Do we know whether something can lower the threshold? I don't think so, right? They never say anything about lowering the threshold. We don't know if we can even lower the threshold, right? They just tell us what the threshold is. That changes, SC from rising proportionally to gradually. So I don't know if we can change that in any way. I don't know if that's something that's intrinsic to our bodies, or we have no idea what's going on there, right? So we don't know. Unsure. B, people who consume an average North American diet cannot increase their consumption of cholesterol and fat without dramatically increasing. If someone is dramatically increasing, right? If that's the necessary thing, is dramatically increasing, we don't know if SC levels ever dramatically increase, right? Unless you dramatically increase cholesterol and fat before the threshold, right? Then I guess they would proportionally increase. So a dramatic increase in cholesterol and fat before the threshold would result in a dramatic increase in the SC levels, but they don't use the word dramatic in relation to consumption of cholesterol and fat, right? If they did, then this could be an okay answer. If they were talking about before the threshold and they said a dramatic consumption of cholesterol and fat, then it would work, but they're missing two things there, right? They're not saying before the threshold, and they're also not saying dramatic consumption of cholesterol and fat. So B is missing two things there, so we don't know. C, people who consume half as much cholesterol and fat as in the average North American diet will not necessarily have half the average serum and cholesterol level. So if you're eating half as much cholesterol and fat, you're past the threshold, right? Because that's greater than 1/4. You're on this side of the threshold. So that's just saying, hey, you'll not necessarily have half if you consume half as much cholesterol and fat. So it's saying this side is not equal to this side, right? The fat and cholesterol you consume is not necessarily equal to the SC levels, which is kind of true, right? Because they're increasing at different rates. The more fat and cholesterol you're eating, the more SC is increasing, but it's not at a proportional rate, right? So it's not exactly half necessarily. So C sounds good to me. I'm going to circle it, but let's still consider D and E because I don't feel 100% about it. Serum cholesterol levels cannot be affected by non-dietary modifications in behavior. We have no idea, right? Do we know anything about non-dietary modifications in behavior, such as exercising or smoking? We have no idea, right? They never told us anything about exercising or smoking or non-dietary modifications in behavior. We don't talk about behavior at all, right? So we have no idea. We don't know about any of those things and whether or not this cholesterol, the SC levels, can be affected by that. E, people who consume less cholesterol and fat than the threshold cannot reduce their serum cholesterol levels. Do we know when people can reduce their serum cholesterol levels? No. I mean, I'm assuming it's when they eat less cholesterol and fat, but if you're consuming less cholesterol and fat than the threshold, that doesn't mean that you're eating less cholesterol and fat overall. Like, that doesn't mean you're eating a decreasing level of cholesterol and fat. And we don't know whether they can reduce their levels anyways or not, or how that process really works. I guess because of the proportion, it would go down with decreased cholesterol and fat consumption. So if it went down with the fat and cholesterol, it's not necessarily true that people who consume less than the threshold, right, cannot reduce their levels. Yeah, cannot is a strong word, right? I think they would be able to if they ate decreasing amounts of fat and cholesterol, then their SC levels should go down by a proportional amount. Theoretically, I mean, I guess we know the relationship holds in one direction. Do we know that that relationship holds in the other direction? Not necessarily, right? Basically, we have no idea. In conclusion, we really don't know. So C here would be the best answer.